to earth and heaven, ring with the harmonies of liberty. Let our rejoicing rise high as the listening skies. Let it resound loud as the rolling sea. Sing a song full of the faith that the dark past has taught us. Sing a song full of the hope that the present has brought us, facing the rising sun of our new day begun. Let us march on till victory is won. Stony the road we trod, bitter the chastening rod, felt in the days when hope unborn had died, yet with a steady beat have not our weary feet come to the place for which our Father sighed. We have come over a way that with tears has been watered. We have come treading our path through the blood of the slaughtered. Out from the gloomy past, till now we stand at last, where the white gleam of our bright star is cast. God of our weary, God of our silent tears, thou who hast brought us thus far on the way, thou who hast by thy might led us into the light. Keep us forever in the path, we pray, lest our feet stray from the places, our God, where we met thee, lest our hearts, drunk with the wine of the world, we forget thee, shadowed beneath thy
You
and
can't.
may
Huh?
we forever stand true to our God, true to our native land, true to our God, true to our native land, true to our God, true to our native land.
And let us say, Amen.
Amen.
Pastor Nick, not only did you go to places I've never heard you go before or experienced in that poem prayer, you've also evoked the leadership of Bishop Dwayne Royster, our new statewide executive director of Power. This is the moment where I was going to invite Bishop to speak anyways, but you evoked him and convened him as all of us. As we get ready to consciously say we are community this morning, and Bishop, we turn over to you to give us your words this morning, after which we will move into the morning service.
Thank you, Rabbi Shawn Zevit, for the invitation to come and be here with you today. And, I had this whole protocol thing worked out, and I'm trying not to cry right now because um, as Reverend Nicholas O'Rourke was singing, uh, I was moved so deeply in my spirit, and I was so connected to, in that moment, the story of the Jewish community and the African American community. And as that song was being sung, I'm so reminded that our journeys are not that dissimilar from one another, and that our struggles and our pain are very similar. And I just thank you for that, Reverend O'Rourke, and thank you, Rabbi Zevit, for being able to be here today. There's so many wonderful faces that I've seen here that I haven't had a chance to see since I've been back, and to be able to spend time with you. And I'm so glad for the gift of Congregation Mishkan Shalom and all that you have meant to Power from its very earliest days, even now unto this moment. You have shared your leadership. You have shared your members with us. I see Irv Acklesberg, one of our board members here. I see Rabbi Mordecai Liebling, who is our interim director of organizing right now. I think about Rabbi Zevit, who has carried the clergy caucus for many more years than he ever intended to do. And the fact that for many years, Mishkan Shalom was the home of the clergy caucus. We met there every month for our meetings and shared in times together. I see so many leaders here, and I'm going to get in trouble if I start naming folk. Because I will miss somebody inevitably and they will be upset with me. So I want to be very careful in doing that, and be very careful in doing that. But I just so much want to greet you in love and in peace. And thank you, President Jones, for your leadership in the congregation right now. And I see my colleague and friend, the Reverend, soon to be Dr. Linda Noonan, in this space as well with us today. And our colleague, Tawanda Starworth, who is one of our newest members and staff members at Power, who is here with us today, all the way from the western side of the state of Pennsylvania. I do want to just again appreciate the fact that we have been on a journey together for over 10 years. That we celebrate our 10th anniversary of coming out this year for Power. We were kind of sort of underground building, and then we had our big founding convention, would have been September of 2011. And so this year in September 2021, we'll celebrate 10 years of being above ground and leading and transforming the city of Philadelphia and now the state of Pennsylvania. I'm so glad to actually be able to be here to talk about this because, just a few months ago, some of you were on the Leadership Assembly when a decision was made that our prophetic faith voice, our prophetic voices of our traditions needed to speak beyond the boundaries of Philadelphia, but to speak throughout the state of Pennsylvania. And can I also say also throughout the country? And we made a distinct decision to move forward as an organization. And what a moment for us to be able to do that in the midst of deep struggle and strife around the world, to be able to lift up our voices together, to be able to point a picture towards beloved community, to be able to point a picture towards what a whole state, what a whole people can look like, to be able to point in this moment what it looks like to have a cornucopia of faith traditions and racial traditions and ethnic traditions and genders and gender identity all coming together, saying that we stand together to build something that is far more powerful than we could ever do by ourselves. It is in this moment that we are moving and growing and seeking to become something more powerful for all the voices of hate and angst and evil that are out there in the world. We are that wall of resistance that says no. We are that wall of resistance that says we are better than this. And that not only are we better than this, but we are pointing towards a future that is full of love and peace and prosperity and opportunity for all. And we do that through our various campaigns. And I know that they're going to be talking about that in a little bit, whether it's working through Live Free or economic dignity or statewide education or local education, or whether working through climate justice or the moments that we have worked on health equity in our communities. We are in this moment. And for such a time as this, have we been called to raise our voices in a voice of unity, in a voice of unity in diversity, to be able to say that we can live a better life, that we can be better than what we are at this moment. So in the days and weeks to come, we'll be making some shifts in the organization. There'll be new opportunities for leadership space within the organization as we build out local chapters all across, not just Philadelphia, but the Lehigh Valley, in central Pennsylvania, eventually moving into western Pennsylvania. We'll be creating new steering committees and boards to help lead this great work that we are embarking on right at this moment in time. There'll be new spaces for us to be able to grow and to expand opportunities for our clergy to be bigger voices across the state and across the country. Because as I said the other night when we had our political education training, so goes Pennsylvania, so goes the country. And so goes the country, so goes the world. And so that us folk in Philadelphia and across the state have the capacity to impact the world and to change it. And so we want to do the best we can to change it for good, to change it for peace, and so that we all might be able to live thriving lives full of love and hope. Thank you all for all your work. If it wasn't for you, this does not happen. But because you all have chosen to use your various gifts, to share your stories, to share your poetry, to share your convictions, to share your presence, to share your phones, to dare to blow a shofar in front of City Hall to celebrate what we had just done in voting together. We are able to be able to transform this world. I am thankful for each and every one of you, and I thank the divine spirit that flows through us all. Blessings to you. Amen.
Amen. Thank you for being the blessing that you are, Bishop Dwayne Royster. From the very first moments that we began linking our arms as faith communities across the city and now the state, and to this moment. Kim cha makor hachayim borcha nirei or. For in you is the source of life. In your light, we see light, and we see it in each other. And I hope you can take in the amens that are peppering the chat room now. Hope it doesn't crash the system, but we'll just reboot if that's the case. And so to follow your words and your uplift, we rise at this moment, if you're comfortable and able, or if you're still sitting, just to straighten yourself up, where we bend our knee and we bow to the divine that is in each other and that is this world and this life. And we rise. Holy Levite David, if you're back online and the rising is shareable, this would be that moment. And Kohenet Shoshana, I know you know this one. Would you be so willing to lead us in this rising song? Where's that unmute button?
And we rise, humbly hearted, rise, won't be divided, rise, with spirit to guide us, rise, in hope, in prayer, we find ourselves here, in hope, in prayer, we're right here. Tikva, tefillah, hinenu. Tikva, tefillah, hinenu. And we rise, all of the children rise. Elders with wisdom rise, ancestors surround us rise. In hope, in prayer, we find ourselves here. In hope, in prayer, we're right here. Tikva, tefillah, hinenu. Tikva, tefillah, hinenu. And we rise up from the wreckage, rise with courage and tears, rise, fighting for life, rise, in hope, in prayer, we find ourselves here, in hope, in prayer, we're right here. Tikva, tefillah, hinenu. Tikva, tefillah, hinenu.
So we rise and bend our knee to the world. Baruch et Yahamevorah. Brucha Yahamevorechet Leholam. And we rise and link arms to cross this sea of reeds to the shore of possibility. And in our shared work together, and in our bumps together, and sometimes our ouches together that we learn from, we can declare Shema, as David brings us to that slide. We can say we hold these truths to be self-evident, that the many names for the experience of life, whether they're divine theologies or human expressions alone, are witnesses to the universe. Like the aspen that share a root over miles, and yet each individual aspen rises through the surface of the earth towards heaven. So we too declare Shema. One more slide, David. Next one. And Lior, if you could lead us in declaring the many and the one.
Shema Yisrael Adonai Echad.
And as we go to the next slide, we chant these words that are thousands of years old. You will love the breath of life, life itself with all your heart and all your soul and with all your strength. These prime directives that I give to you today are to be on your hearts. Impress them on your children. Talk about them when you sit at home and when you walk along the road. When you lie down and when you get up. Tie them as symbols upon your hands and bind them on your foreheads. Write them on the door frames of your houses and on your gates. And these are the truths that we live by. As the next slide comes upon us, we have faced a year of deep waters and reeds grasping at us. Back one up, David. Reeds that were pulling at us, sometimes dragging us under, sometimes inviting us to pit ourselves against each other. And yet we have held strong. And so we can reflect on this year for the losses and the challenges and the work that's still yet to be done. But just like Miriam did, when we cross to the other side, to the beginning of the long road towards promise and liberation, we can take that moment and celebrate and know that ain't nobody gonna turn us around. And I hear the voice of Pastor Nick coming upon us. Hopefully the unmuted Pastor Nick O'Rourke, ain't nobody but you, brother. I can't see you, but I feel you. So we'll roll into this. There ain't nobody gonna turn us around, turn us around, turn us around. No, ain't nobody gonna turn us around. We're gonna keep on walking, keep on talking, marching up to freedom land. Mi chamocha ba'elim Adonai, mi kamocha nedar b'kodesh, nora tehilot oseferet. Ain't nobody, Nick's available. Over to you, brother.
Ain't nobody gonna turn us round, turn us round, turn us round. Ain't gonna let nobody turn us round. We gonna keep on marching, keep on talking, marching up to freedom land.
Oh yeah, malchut charau panecha, bokei hayam, lifnei Moshe ze'eli, anu ve'am. What else do we need to pay attention to?
Turn us round.
Yeah.
Turn us round. Turn us round, ain't gonna let no racists turn us round. We gonna keep on walking, keep on talking, marching up to freedom land.
Oh, freedom land, Yaim Lochleo, Lamvahe. Holiness is eternal, oh, Yaim Lochleo, Lamvahe.
Ain't gonna let no white supremacists turn us round, turn us round, turn us round. Ain't gonna let no white supremacists turn us round. We're gonna keep on walking, keep on talking, marching up to freedom land.
Ain't nobody now, ain't nobody gonna turn us around, turn us around, turn us around. We ain't gonna let nobody turn us around. We're gonna keep on walking,
keep on talking, marching up to freedom land.
marching up to freedom land. Baruch ataya. We can find you in the blessing and the clarity when we step into our power of salvation. So we dry ourselves off from that swim and we pivot around. We add, as people are doing spontaneously in the chat, the other claims that we're going to make to not have us thwarted or be turned around. No problem, brother. When you swim through the sea of reeds, there's always some tech issues that are going to happen. But here we are. If we're not standing already, we rise again to take our place in the great standing prayer, which is invites the values that we stand for. And I want to invite you, May. May is an inspiring and amazing human being, RC, Reconstructionist Rabbinical College student and one of the leaders in our community working for climate justice through power, and also one of the protest chaplains, and who just recently led part of the public response to the census loss of life, many of our Asian American siblings. And May, as we enter the Amidah, I wonder if I could call upon you to be the first of our Power core team leaders. I know you're also giving voice to Rabbi Julie Greenberg today, who heads up that initiative and is also a member of Mishkan. And Sharon Wyman and I, who have invited people to share today, who are working in specific issue areas, just as inspiring as Pastor Nick and Bishop Royster were. We didn't ask people to give PSAs to let us know what's happening. We invited them to speak for a minute about why this work calls to them and why this work keeps them involved. So May, if you would be willing to share with us your call for climate justice.
Yeah, thank you, Rabbi Shawn. For me, my call to climate justice is one of breath. For me, it is through breath that I relate to the divine, to that which is holy, to that which some call God. And I recognize breath as being something that has been constantly stolen from our bodies, especially in this time, in this moment of COVID-19, of police brutality, and of climate, and of racism, right? And of environmental racism. So for me, that's my call to power, is to is to advocate for breath, for the breath of the divine that moves through all of us, that moves through the trees and through us. We're alive because of the trees are breathing. And so that is my call. That is my calling. And right now it's in the climate justice sector and realm in my work with power. But as a rabbi, as a human, I am passionate about protecting the breath of all life, of all peoples, and to not live in a world where it is stolen from us.
Thank you so much, May. And with May's permission, I'm going to invite you, May, if you're willing to read your own words, which in the light of the events of this week, in addition to your work in climate justice on our behalf, I want to invite you to share these words too.
I want to live in a world where bodies of color are celebrated in their glory, where bodies of all colors are able to live, to thrive, to breathe, to know safety, and to experience radical joy and pleasure of unparalleled safety and comfort. I want us, I think I rewrote something, that's okay. I want us to live in a world of radical joy and pleasure of unparalleled safety and comfort. I want us to live in a world where white supremacy, white nationalism, and white terrorism are abolished. I want to live in this world, and I want the children of our children to live in that world too. Maybe there's a better world for them than the one I will live to see.
Amen. Thank you, May. And so we dig not only for the generations to come, but also for our ancestors of all our backgrounds. And as we've done in the previous weeks, if you even want to change your name to name the background, not only are we on the Lenni Lape people's land and on the preciousness of this universe that precedes all peoples, but each of us has our own backgrounds. And if you feel so moved as we connect with our ancestors for this Amidah, and you want to rename yourself and add to your name your roots, where your ancestors have come from, may even be this land, I invite you to do so now. And we bring all those names and all our ancestors together. We invite them to the table in this moment to strengthen us, both learning from the example of where we might be inspired and draw from them, but also learning from the example where we are making different choices and we are no longer defined by their actions and their legacy. It is all part of our lineage. So please join me in your own hearts as we soften our knees and we draw our ancestors towards us. And we'll enter a period of, after the liturgy of quiet reflection, and shalom, peace will bring us back. Baruch atah Eloheinu, Elohei Avotenu v'Imotenu, Elohei Avraham, Elohei Yitzchak, Elohei Yaakov, Elohei Sarah, Elohei Rivka, Elohei Rachel ve'Elohei Leah, Ha'el HaGadol HaGibor ve'Hanora, El Elyon, Gomel Chasadim Tovim, Ve'Konei HaKol, Ve'Zocher Chastei Avot ve'Imot, U'Mevii Geula Livnei Bneihem, Leman Shemo Be'ahava, Melech Ozer U'Mashiach U'Magen, Baruch atah Magen Avraham Ve'Ozeret Sarah. In invite you to take the next few moments in quiet reflection for the prayers of your heart, for the silence that your soul is longing for. I've been happy lately, thinking about all the good things to come. And I believe it could be something good has become. Oh, I've been smiling lately, dreaming about the world as one. And I believe it could be someday, this day, it's gonna come. 'Cause out on the edge of darkness there lies the peace train. Oh, peace train, take this country, come take me home again. Oh, train, come ding louder, glide on the peace train. Everyone jump upon it, come on the peace train. Oh, get your bags together, go and bring your good friends too, 'cause it's getting nearer, it'll soon be with you. Now come and join the living, it's not so far from you. Now it's getting nearer, soon it will all be true. 'Cause out on the edge of darkness there lies the peace train. Oh, peace train, take this world, come take us home again. Oh, say shalom, shalom bim romav. Oh, yeah, say shalom, shalom aleinu. Ve'al ko Yisrael, ve'al ko Yishmael, ve'al ko Yoshvei Tevel, ve'al ko ha'olam. 'Cause out on the edge of darkness there lies the peace train. We are the peace train. Shalom salam, let us be the peace we want to be. Shalom salam, till all of us are free. None of us are free till all of us are free. Shalom, shalom, shalom. Let there be peace and let it begin with me. Can you hear that song? Let it be. So, dear friends, we are at that auspicious moment. For many of the seasoned Mishkaners, this is the moment they look forward to see our dining room again, not just the little sanctuary we've made in the living room here. So please come and migrate with me as we move into the Torah zone. And our wonderful Rivka Jerish, who has prepared the chanting today for us, will lead us as we lift up the words of Torah today. Bring the laptop over here. And so we can each reach out through the camera and connect with the Torah in ways that we want in spirit, or even reaching out through the lens Each one of us is a letter that comprises this scroll with the letter of our lives, and we contribute to the white spaces that are unoccupied with our own stories and weave them into the story of our people and of humanity and of this planet. And so as we uncover the Torah and we reach out and connect with it that way, we declare the unity once again. Oops. And I'm just going to put this up here. And Lior, I wonder if you would do us the honor one more time to declare Shema for all of us, and we will respond to you. So if you want to unmute yourself, Lior will lead us first, and then we'll respond and declare the call of unity.
Shema Yisrael Adonai Eloheinu Adonai Echad.
Shema Yisrael Adonai
Echad Eloheinu Kadosh Adonai Kadosh Shemo. Adonai Hiti Adonai
So let's do a little marching. And Pastor Nick, if you're still there and unmuted, let's relive the glory days of marching in the streets of Philly and around Harrisburg. Only I can't sing with you this time, so you do the job for both of us.
Ain't gonna let nobody.
Oh, we're marching in the light of God.
Oh, thank you very much.
But we ain't gonna let nobody stop us singing that for sure. Go for it.
Well, we're marching in the light of God. Well, we're marching in the light of God. Well, we're marching in the light of God. We are marching in the light of God. Well, we're marching in the light of God. Well, we're marching, oh, we're marching, yeah, we're marching in the light of God. Oh, we're marching, well, we're marching, yeah, we're marching in the light of God. We are marching in the light of God. We are marching in the light of God. Well, we're marching in the light of God. We are marching in the light of God. Well, we're marching, oh, we're marching, yeah, we're marching in the light of God. We are marching, well, we're marching, yeah, we're marching in the light of
God. Amen. Thank you, brother. Well, you've marched us right over to something that I've shared before, but since we have a whole bunch of guests with us today, too, fellow sojourners. I just wanted to stop at a moment in that march in front of my grandfather's painting, one of the many paintings in his years as a photo finisher and as an artist. Why, you ask this one? Because I think it exemplifies all our work for spirituality and justice in the world. This painting of a small synagogue in Zichron Yaakov in northern part of Israel was their local synagogue in the 7 years that my grandparents in retirement lived there. And my grandfather got permission to paint the synagogue, but it was so drab inside with gray walls and pieces of plaster chipped out and the roof leaking that he was moved out of his own distress that the sacred center was not being kept up, apropos of the words that were being said there, that he painted the synagogue with the Torah open about the directives towards observing Shabbat and beautifying it, the way he envisioned it could be, and in his mind it ought to be. And when the painting was debuted, the board felt so ashamed that they had let the synagogue fall into disrepair that they started a campaign and they redid the synagogue according to his painting and painted it in the colors that he envisioned. And so for all of us, I always draw strength when I look up at this painting and think of him, that we are working to envision and embody the world as it can be, not simply as it is, and inviting all of us and each other to live into that vision, to repaint the world with the rainbow colors that we are committed to and the values that we hold dear. And no, may it be for all of us, Ken Yehi Ratzon. And so we've arrived at an auspicious moment. Not only is it our self-declared Power Shabbat, but it's also the beginning of a new book. And I'm just going to turn the laptop for a moment here. Not everyone's always seen the Torah up close, but just to take a look at this beginning part of Leviticus here. Leviticus, whose name in Hebrew is Vayikra. And I just want to sit on that for a moment because while it understandably has the Greek and then the English term Leviticus because it's a Levitical code, often called the Levitical book of the five initial books, that the Hebrew word Vayikra does not mean a Levite or serving in the temple. It means to be called forth, right? And so it's part of our opportunity today and the synchronicity of this Shabbat. I promise you, Sharon and I didn't look at the Parsha. We looked at the date as a preparation for Passover and coming together as a mixed multitude and trying to break the shackles of what enslaves us. But the fact that it also is the beginning of this book where we are called forth into sacred service, each in our own way, is another profound addition. And so before we get to the actual reading that Rivka's going to lead us through, have the opportunity to hear from a few more of our powerful people. And hopefully I had the list somewhere here. I think, Rabbi Mordechai, if we can call you forth here, and I'm actually going to, give me 1 second here. I'm going to do this share screen here and going to invite one by one. We'll call folks up. We heard from Bishop before, who was called actually on some other church duty and with regrets needed to attend to that totally understandably. And I'm actually going to start by Sharon, since you've been so key and you're stepping into the shoes that Steve Newman and Lisa Gale Zeitlin and Margaret Lindsay have shepherded our Power Core team before. If you could share a moment of what's called you towards this civic engagement and this new iteration of our Power Core team.
Great. First, I just thanks everyone for being here today, especially Bishop Royster, Pastor Nick, Rabbi May, and all of us, all of the folks here. It's really a blessing. For me, I grew up in the South, Memphis, Tennessee, as a Jew, and and having had that experience, I witnessed up up front and personal some of the horrors of white supremacy in the South. I got to see what Jim Crow looked like, and I had a mother. I have a mother who was very politically active um, in my childhood, and I was out canvassing when I was probably 8 years old to get progressive politicians elected to important offices. And today I feel called to do that same thing. And I first got involved with power in 2018. I felt called to get involved in the 2018 election with power. And I wasn't exactly sure why. It was power that called me, and except that I wanted to be part of this rich, diverse community, um, and 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 it was very meaningful to me. And I started going to these to the leadership assemblies and just finding myself so moved and drawn into this faith connection to really important um, this important work in our society. I got in it through civic engagement, and then in this past election took a much more of a organizing role to get folks involved at Mishkan to get out the vote. And it's just been a very powerful way and one of the most moving ways that I've been engaged in political work. And what I'm finding is that it's calling me back to my own faith, my own Judaism, and to my community. And it's been almost like calling me home. And I'm just so grateful. And I'm so grateful to do the work of power with all the Mishkan folks that are part of it.
Amen. Thank you so much, Sharon. And you're a key part of why we're re-energized in this area. And thank you for your leadership. I know you'll have an announcement later on, and Sharon and some of the team are going to stay around online afterwards if you want to talk a little bit more and connect. And we have a meeting after Passover to both meet and then open the doors to anyone else who wants to join us. Rabbi Mordechai Liebling, who's a founding member of Mishkan Shalom, sailed into the sunset after an illustrious career of leading our movement for a dozen years and then leading the justice program at RRC. And in the name of one of our teachers, Reb Zalman Schachter Shalomi, Mordechai did not retire. He was redeployed. And his days are professionally occupied as well as a proud member of Mishkan in this work. And given Bishop's need to go exit horizontally, Mordechai, if you could just share what your calling is in terms of the democracy pods that you've helped usher in, as well as some of the racial justice and anti-Semitism work that you've partnered, with others of our Black colleagues in bringing up.
Thank you, Shawn. Shabbat Shalom, everybody. As Shawn said, I had just retired from RRC, and before I went to rabbinical school, I was a community organizer, and I figured, well, once I left rabbinical school 40 years later, I could be a community organizer again. Bishop made me an offer I couldn't refuse, and now it turns out I am the interim director of organizing for the whole state and helping to sort of lead power into becoming a statewide organization, which feels like a great capstone for my life as an organizer. it's very exciting to be able to think of power as a force that can shape this entire state. I believe that we have the ability to really transform the narrative of how people talk about Pennsylvania and transform the politics of the state. We are a model of an organization that is doing the hard work of what it means to be interracial and interfaith. It's never easy. There are certainly a lot of bumps along the road. And I think we are trying to do this with authenticity. And that's probably for me the most exciting part of power. The authenticity, the genuineness, which we are trying to deal with what, the legacy of white supremacy, the legacy of anti-Semitism, the legacy of division that makes it hard for people to work together. And looking at those things, squarely on and saying, okay, how do we do this together? And the energy that is liberated by breaking down the walls of separation is what energizes power and what I believe in will give us the ability to transform the state.
Amen. Thank you so much, Mordechai, just for the blessing that you are, period. And the rest is commentary, as our tradition will say. So Irv Acklesberg, one of our longtime foundational members who's helped us through many a day, and along with David Piver and Keely Newman, is one of our 3 co-chairs for our sustainability campaign, which is about to clear the $900,000 mark on the way to our goal, which we know we will achieve because it's incredibly close. In fact, we're going to pass it. I keep on agitating that, like, why stop there at 950? So that, that's old news already. So Irv, you too were like living the quiet life, right? Not really doing much, sitting around, and then suddenly you got a call for the power board recently. So you want to share with us why you stepped into that calling, what it's meant for you?
Certainly. Well, it's a calling I've had various points of my life, and I felt this morning really transported, partly through the words of America's most sacred hymn and the chant of Reverend Nick, that I felt transported to my childhood. I was raised in a small synagogue in North Jersey with a rabbi who was marching and going to jail with Dr. King, and who would on Friday nights come back and tell us those tales. And I remember as a child being brought up in the words of Torah and the prophets, and seeing through America's prophet the words of the Hebrew prophets was for me, that's how I learned about being a Jew. And being a Jew meant fixing what was wrong. And through those examples, I actually thought that I was going to be a rabbi, and that's what I told the admissions offices at the various schools I was going to, and in the end took a different path and became a lawyer for the poor in Philadelphia. And so now I see almost like my paths kind of, a lot of things converging as I've taken the call to work with power, and I'm just so moved to do it. I have to say that in my own Judaism, probably the points that I felt the closest to God are the points where I've crossed those boundaries between people and between religions. For me, the fact that religion has often been a barrier, a wall between people, rather than what brings us together, is one of the great sort of ironies and tragedies of our life. And that those moments when we cross those walls and realize, in the words that we used in our Torah study this morning, that it's one wide river with many wells. And as we come out of those those, wells and together into that big river. I just feel so moved and very excited about working with all of the communities. I feel excited about the fellowship that is possible through power, not just what we're marching about, but how we're marching together and learning about each other. And so, I just hope that we can all just take to heart those words in the closing words in the hymn, that may we forever stand true to our God and true to our native land that we are trying to build together. Thank you.
Amen. Thank you so much, Irv. And thank you in the here and now for you being a key person who's rewriting the bylaws and the governance aspect so that our reach becomes Philadelphia plus and statewide and networking us together. As in our tradition teaches, kavanah is intention, but without the keva, without the structure and the words and the binding force, the water just dissipates. So thank you for all your holy work right now. And speaking of which, our holy sister Rivka / Rebecca Jarash, who's another founder of Mishkan, who is our beloved ed director for a number of years as well. And like so many Mishkaners, as soon as you circled out of your professional and membership capacity, Rivka, you immediately said, oh, why don't I step up onto the board and be the education rep and get involved in Power's education team. So let's just hear from you what's called you to this work at this time.
Thank you. Thank you, Rabbi. So I was from a family where my father taught in Philadelphia public schools, and he liked being a teacher, but he would bring home his concern about his students who were often very poor. He often brought home his students to share dinner with us. So I became a teacher, and my first job was in North Philly. It was in Northern Liberties, which is now very gentrified, but was very poor when I taught there. And here were children that were immigrants and from poor families. And I looked around and they had the poorest of materials. Our social studies books were from 1920, when Philadelphia was the tanning capital of the world. We had no science materials. We had old books. It really made me angry to see that the poorest children were being treated the poorest way. Now, I taught in Philadelphia for 36 years, and I tried to get on all the committees and to get more funding, and I wrote grants. But I realized that schools in my area were not being given what they needed. Now, I've always been involved politically, and I've worked for issues that I believed in. And in fact, when Power started, I was working on elections through Power. But I went to one of the legislative assemblies and they talked about the education justice team, and I realized that's what spoke to me. So about 3 years ago, I went to a meeting at St. Malachi's, and I realized that there were people there that knew more about the politics of education than I did, even after being a teacher for all those years. And there was a man on the committee who had written the definitive study on how poor people, and especially schools with Black and brown children, were given the least funding. And it really moved me. It really spoke to it actually spoke to what I already knew, but here were all these people who understood the same way I did. So I became part of the education justice team. We meet actually every other week. Some weeks we meet every week. We have several projects going, and it's actually very exciting work with people who are very devoted. to making us, to advocating for a system that will be better for the children of Philadelphia. And especially during this time of pandemic, it really became clear how the poorest children got the least, because they didn't have internet access at first, and they didn't have computers, all the things that were assumed so that you could have Zoom learning. So it's really been a time of working hard to change things. And I'm very excited to be part of this team.
Thank you, Rivka. Thank you for all you've done for so many of us for so many years, and also how you and Sharon and Lynn Edelman, our new manager of communications and membership, who's here with us this morning as well, bless you, Lynn, are working together to think about lifting the profile of our tikkun work as well in the weeks ahead, so that we can all be more aware. And Seth Horwitz, our Tikkun Olam board representative, who's will be moving past the beta time anytime soon, I know, so that we'll all participate in this amazing online networking program that Seth has been developing as part of his leadership as well. So there's another area of the many issue areas. And again, why you're hearing from some of us, there's dozens and dozens of us who have been at any number of actions and assemblies and participated in getting out the vote. The numbers were enormous in terms of our participation, whether it was through Power, New Sanctuary Movement, any of the other networks here. But the specific people talking have been involved in the issue areas. So there's ways of being involved in any particular cause and showing up and supporting and bearing witness or signing on. I want to invite Susan and then Stan to say a word about why they've been active in the issue areas of economic dignity. And I know we can, I think I said this somewhere else recently, Stan and Susan, we can kind of almost sniff the possibility of a Philadelphia, public bank as a paradigm shifter in the country. I don't want to spoil it, but thanks to your work and others, it's getting closer. So please, Susan and then Stan, just to share with us a minute of each of what's called you to this aspect of the work.
Well, you all got me thinking about where I come from, where my ancestors come from. First of all, Shabbat Shalom, everybody. It's great to be here. So on my maternal side, I hail from the mines of Wales, and my ancestors were probably lured over by Methodist ministers hired by mining companies to work in northeastern Pennsylvania. And so I grew up knowing my mother came from poor, hard, scrambling miners and chicken farmers in northeastern Pennsylvania, and that my grandfather was somehow connected with the labor movement. So I'm drawn to the economic issues, economic justice, and as Mishkan became more involved in Power, I decided I needed to find a team and get in there and work, because if you want to change the world, you have to join, right? You have to be part of something and work alongside other people who are doing that. So I went with my basic sense of the core issue for me, which is economic justice, how money moves, how money flows and doesn't flow in this country, who has it, who doesn't have it, how does it move? So, I found my way to the economic dignity team, and who I found out were working very closely with labor leaders in Philadelphia, with the Service Workers Union and Unite Here, and that spoke to me. And at the same time, I was working with Stan, or somewhere along there, working with Stan and others in neighborhood networks on this idea of creating a public bank in Philadelphia, which is a way to actually change the game, change the economic game that we're playing. So so I was doing that, and I was involved with the economic dignity team. And, you know, as I continued on with that work, I decided to let's bring them together. So now public banking is a key issue area, that a campaign within the economic dignity team, Philadelphia Public Banking. And Stan will tell you a little more about that. We also work in that team. We have subcommittees. We work on housing. There's a team researching, like building a campaign in housing in Philadelphia, kind of housing advocacy for fair housing. And we have worked on minimum wage issues, and working on the state level with the Wage Local campaign, which is a campaign to give localities the option to create their own minimum wage. So if we're currently blocked by the state from doing that. But so those are the three areas that we work in. And so I'm just so grateful to have been able to have followed my nose into that particular team, and just to be part of this amazing power. For me, it's got to be, we're not going to change the world unless we build collective power. And how else do we do that but in the very places in which we live?
Thank you, Susan. Thank you. Thank you so much. And Stan, and again, just for us hearing your calling, we're going to leave time afterwards for people to gather and hear more specifics about issues or get involved. But, you know, for you, and I know Margaret's there as well, you've been involved in Indivisible and Philly Networks and a whole bunch of places. But this particular piece, ever since the day I met you, was part of your Horizon Line vision. So what has called you to this?
Thanks, Rabbi. Shabbat Shalom, everyone. Thanks to all our guests for being here. For Susan, for her great partnership in doing this work. So when somebody asks me what it is about Judaism that drives me toward the work I do, I really feel like the question should be, how could Judaism let me not do that work? Growing up, I felt like Judaism and political liberalism were actually pretty much the same thing. I would describe my specific branch of Judaism growing up actually as lapsed Orthodox. We wanted to keep kosher, go to shul, and do all the other things, but there was just no time. But there was one thing we knew in our bones, nevertheless: to be Jewish was to be for social justice. And how could we not feel that? There is no prayer or text we needed to consult or cite when finding our way. Our festival life was all about a social justice imperative, whether Hanukkah's celebration of religious freedom, Pesach's against the oppression of slavery, the ultimate economic injustice, I might say, of course, and Purim, the fight against genocide. And I grew up in the shadow of the Holocaust. I was actually born between the Nazi surrender and the Japanese surrender in July of 1945. So I grew up in the shadow of that horrible historic event, whose lessons didn't come from symbolism or ancient history, but the flesh and blood of near relatives who perished because of hate and ignorance. The lessons that all this have taught me have been clear, and I do my best to apply them my whole life up until now, and having the opportunity to apply them in joint work and power with brothers and sisters driven by their own understanding of their faith has been a blessing to me, which I look forward to enjoying even more of in coming days and weeks and months.
Amen. Thank you. And Susan and Stan and everyone, I look forward to breaking out the bubbly Manischewitz when the public bank is opened and opening an account as soon as possible. So thank you for your ongoing efforts. So we're going to come in for a landing in just a moment and then open our Torah for anyone to come up, so to speak, through the lens or rise up inside yourself. I know Lila Saber. I just want to give Lila a shout out. She is our Power congregational touch point organizer, and she's been working with Sharon and myself and others at our meetings along the way. And also, you might have seen him in a fleetingly, but Rabbi Micah Gurin Weiss was here. I was going to give him a little moment here, but I see he was on for childcare. He and Naomi have twins, and Rabbi Micah is a recent graduate of RC, but he's now on staff for social justice for the Reconstructionist movement, whose commission, of which I represent the Reconstructionist Rabbinical Association on. It's about 15 Jews of all hues on that commission, and racial justice is the core issue that we've taken on to focus on this first year globally throughout all those efforts. So I just wanted to give Lila and Rabbi Micah a shout out there. And Pastor Nick, I know that Bishop Royster had to scoot before, and he was going to say something about this, but I just, you're an honorary Mishkan member. We schlep you over to more Shabbat services than some members actually attend. So we're going to give you that status this morning. But not only have you been involved with the racial justice work from the beginning and now with your work at the Working Families Party, but you've also just cycled back into leadership. I'm excited to announce that Pastor Nick has agreed to join me as Reverend Abby Tennis is preparing to give birth to new life in the next couple of weeks. Pastor Nick has stepped up into rotation to co-chair the Faith Leaders Caucus. We just renamed ourselves that to have a term that's more inclusive of religion and faith traditions that don't have clergy in the traditional sense. And Pastor Nick, I wonder if you could say what that calling is for you right now and anything else around the Live Free, the racial justice work that we do, that Reverend Mark Tyler and Elder Melanie Dubose, front for us as well through Power.
I have found that throughout the last 6, 7, 8 years or so, that we have seen a resurgence in movement and focus on ushering in a world that is not yet but can be. That Power and the Clergy Caucus, now Faith Leaders Caucus, has been at the center of providing a moral voice, a framing for folks to understand the moment in which we are in. I recall hearing clearly Bishop talk about at the pinnacle of the Ferguson uprising, this Kairos moment that we find ourselves in, this moment that is so pointed, and how that has helped me stay grounded in the midst of so much ebb and flow and dynamism that we have seen over the last, like I said, several years. Stepping into a role, having served as an organizer for a number of years with Power on staff, learning to cut my teeth, holding shoulder to shoulder with you, Rabbi Shawn, and with many of you on the call as well, as we marched together, hand in hand, shoulder and shoulder, when we could do that pre-COVID, calling for funding for our students, for our children, fighting and pushing for a living wage, looking to decarcerate as much as we possibly could, and to really, as we say, beat our weapons into plowshares and things like that. That has helped me, coming into this new role has helped me to realign myself there. When you kind of wade out into the wider political world, it's easier to kind of get caught in the blowing winds, and I'm using a lot of symbolic language, but that's how it feels at times. Being in this role allows me to be recentered to my why, and I think the forces that allow me to do what I do. And so I'm just excited to be able to kind of step in, allow some reprieve for Reverend Tennis in that role, so she can bring new life into this new world that we're building, and to provide support with you also, Rabbi. I don't have any reports from the Live Free team, but I do know that they have been diligent in working to continue the fight against stop and frisk, but also to help influence the forming of this new police advisory commission. I think I may have the terminology around it wrong, but there's obviously the past election cycle affirmed this new commission that's going to have a little bit more teeth, a little bit more influence, and they have been having a number of meetings with the councilman from the 4th district, and it looks to be promising in terms of what they look to do. So excited about my new role, stepping in as a clergy co-chair, as well as helping to lift that work and I guess continue it on as I did before.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Pastor Nick. Your friendship and colleagueship has been one of the highlights for me in doing this work. And, for me to conclude some of the testimonies this morning and welcome our guests as well who have come from different faith communities and power folk who are here, that when each of us thinks about what's shaped our narrative, there's certainly stories of my childhood in Winnipeg and growing up as the second generation born in North America, where all my grandparents and great-grandparents came from different parts of Europe to escape persecution or sometimes to escape being put on the front lines of armies for certain death. Coming to a land with the hope for freedom and bringing those struggles certainly there, but on the cusp of moving into new neighborhoods and dealing with some of the tensions that way. I remember growing up with those, but seeing in my parents and my grandparents the sense of, as Rabbi Hillel said 2,000 years ago, if I'm not for myself, who will be? But if I'm only for myself, then what on earth am I doing? And if not now, when? And if not me, who? And I've witnessed both of my parents who did not did not have a Jewish education, did not quote scripture or Musar or Kabbalistic, phrases, embody these things. Each of their stances, their embodiment of those actions for me taught me about tikkun olam and v'ahavta et re'echa kamocha, to love each other as ourselves, long before I even knew those phrases. And my work on the streets and schools and workplaces in Toronto using art and improvisational and educational theater and film for a decade, before I came to Philadelphia and RRC, every issue we were dealing with in power, we had a play on, and it just amazes me how so much I learned through art and justice is now through faith and justice playing out. Maybe there's some different chords in that, but the issues seem to be eternal and need our vigilance always. But the arc is being bent to new ways, I feel, in this moment. And I feel very grateful coming to Mishkan Shalom. It'll be 8 years this July, and knowing that we had just become part of power. I think Lisa Gale was our board rep at that moment in time, and Rabbi Linda was helping Holtzman, who now with their Tikkun Olam Chavra is also a member of Power. That was pivotal for me. That excited me about coming to Mishkan Shalom, having gotten involved in community organizing with Rabbi Mordechai Liebling when I worked for the Reconstructionist movement, and then in Cleveland at the formation of a chapter there. So this has always been important work to me, and it has shaped and reshaped me. There's a banner, one of the photo banners on the Mishkan website that has Bishop Royster and Reverend Tyler, myself and others with a megaphone. It's one of those photos that recycles itself if you go to our website. And that was Passover, actually. When I think of Pesach coming up, that was just a few years ago, where there was April 4th. It was the first day of Passover. It was the one time my entire family and my parents, now my dad of blessed memory, came to Philadelphia for Seder. I was hosting them that night, Rabbi Simcha and I, and yet there was a power call to march down Broad Street to lift up all the issues. That's right, Lisa Gale, right? At my interview with the board, we talked about power as well, so you had me at hello there. And hopefully I passed the test. Had I said something, that, was problematic, we were never gone further that way. But that call was to come on the streets, and I struggled inside myself because I never left home or synagogue on the first 2 holy days of Passover. And yet our relationships, not the issue itself, because there's always somebody, there needs to always be somebody else to take our place. It's not just about does the thing rise or fall because any one of us is there or not there, but the relationships called me. And I remember co-leading with Rabbi Yael and announcing to all of us who were gathered there where I was going, just so there was no, in case there was a news flash or something, it wasn't, wait a minute, like our rabbi was here and now he's on the news, what's going on here? But just explain where I had come to make that choice, that values-based choice to march with my siblings down the street and be in support. And that day, as I was marching in the light of God behind that trailer and hearing all the inspiring speakers, Bishop Royster waved me over, and I came up, and these two huge dudes lifted me up and put me on this back of this truck, and suddenly Reverend Tyler stuck a megaphone in front of me and said, "Now Rabbi Shawn will talk about the connection between Passover and Martin Luther King's work." And, as one of my teachers said, be shy on your own time. And, there it was. My experience of Passover was forever changed. And the next year, when I was driving to Cleveland and there was an action in Harrisburg, and the call came, could you be in Harrisburg and give a few words there? I planned my trip for Passover to stop in Harrisburg, which was on the way, and then continue on, because the aspect of chanting about freedom on Passover without actually doing something about it was no longer an option. And that for me is part of the work and the relationships that this has borne. And so, can I hear an amen to that?
Amen.
Okay. That gives us the permission then to weave our letters and our stories, and so many of you who are here today who each have been taking your place and may yet get involved in any number of issues, or Israel-Palestine, which we have a program with tomorrow. There's many ways. I want to appreciate the work we do in power and know that we're not only defined by power in terms of our work in justice. There are many other areas and organizations we're also partners with, that power now partners with in coalition, which is really, really awesome. So let's weave our stories into the stories of our ancestors. And David's been waiting there so patiently with his screensaver. He's been cracking his knuckles, waiting to put Leviticus chapter 5 up. And we're going to have 3 installments of this one. And we're going to begin with Rivka is going to chant this for us. And I'm going to shift my laptop over here and arc it so that we can actually see the scroll, and then you'll see also the words in English that are being chanted. And it's our tradition at Mishkan Shalom, when one chants the Torah, there's an aliyah, meaning a coming up to, a claiming of that aliyah, and that section that's being chanted. It used to be allocated to individuals by their lineage, or special occasions, etc., like we do in a bar bat mitzvah or a b mitzvah. But we've opened it up thanks to innovations by Rabbi Arthur Waskow, Rabbi Zalman Schachter, and others to make these comings up inclusive. And we invite our guests. This is, when as long as there's another Jewish person that comes up, it's open to whoever wishes to come up together, who wants a closer connection, to claim those words. So it's an interesting piece, of Leviticus. If you can go back to that slide of chapter 5, verses 14 through 16 for a moment, David, because I want to explain this first aliyah that we have coming here. Leviticus can be tricky sometimes. We've heard all these inspiring words, and now we're going to chant from the Torah that talks about offerings to make things right. And I want us to see what we're about to chant not as punitive towards us, even though this first aliyah, this first chanting, if you keep on searching, David, you're going to get it back again, I know. This first aliyah is about when we do something that we're unaware of, an unconscious action that has caused damage, particularly in the realm of the sacred or the holy. It was particularly to the tent of meeting and any of the godly ascribed ritual items. But we can enlarge that circle and look at this for any of you who feel called up. Again, not that the offering is towards something that we may have discovered was specifically done, but it may be. So if you have done something out of unconscious bias or been made aware that you've been the perpetrator of a microaggression, or that you just want this blessing to become more aware so you're not unconscious in the world, this one is for you. And David's got the blessing up here. And just go back to the blessing for a moment, David. So all those who want to claim this first aliyah together that Rivka will then chant, beginning Leviticus chapter 5, verse 14, you can reach out either your hand or the fringes of your prayer shawl, your talit, through the lens. and connect it with you as well, and bring it into our Torah here. And we offer this blessing to claim this particular energy and this offering that we hope to align ourselves with. So we say, and Counter David, if you're there, could you be the respondent, please? Baruch et Yah HaMevorach.
Baruch Adonai HaMevorach.
Baruch Adonai HaMevorach le'olam va'ed. Baruch atah ya Eloheinu ruach haolam asher kirvanu la'avodato v'natan lanu et torato. Baruch atah notenet HaTorah. And David, if you could take us to the first Aliyah slide as Rivka chants for us.
Amen. Vayidaber Adonai el Moshe lemor. Nefesh ki timo ma'al v'chata bishgaga mikadshei Adonai v'hevi et hashamo l'Adonai ayil tamim min hatzon berkacha keser shekalim b'shekel hakodesh liasham v'et asher chata min hakodesh yishalem v'et chamishito yosef alav v'natanoto lakohen v'hakohen yichaper elav be'el ha'asham v'nislach lo.
And I'll pass that energetic connection back to all of you as we say, and David, if you could bring us back to the blessing so that all those who have come up can connect with that blessing.
There it is.
Baruch atah ya Eloheinu ruach haolam asher natan lanu Torat emet v'chaye olam nata betochenu Ruchat Yah notenet haTorah mishaberach avotenu v'imotenu. May the breath of life of eternal and that source that our ancestors drew upon. May we be strengthened, all of us who have come up for this Aliyah, for us to become more aware of where unconsciously we may cause injury or perpetrated prejudice or bias, become more aware of our privilege and use that privilege to unprivilege ourselves and create greater access for all. And may we be blessed and strengthened in our work together as our people have always done, to allow a way to reconnect and make reparation and rebalancing for those actions so that we stay in loving connection with each other, knowing that our work brings us into greater proximity, and sometimes as a result, we can inadvertently trip into or over each other. And may we take the truth and the encouragement of this Torah into our hearts and strengthen ourselves with each other, listen deeply when an ouch has been caused, and do the right thing. And even when it doesn't seem that we can bring it back to exactly what it was, that we at least stay in relationship with each other and move forward and don't repeat things in the future. With all our brothers and sisters and siblings around the world of all backgrounds and all inclinations. And let us say, Amen. So the second Aliyah now we move forward starts with Ve'im Nefesh. And it's important to lift up that word that is translated by King James in the English as a person, but Nefesh is a soul. There was no body-spirit split in the ancient Hebrew understanding, that we were living beings, were ensouled bodies. And so this word that when a soul, does something now, though with consciousness, and shatters a mitzvah, that when we do something out of anger or ignorance, and yet we are aware of the intent or impact, and still we go ahead and do something, that we have to make reparations. And I'm thinking of the work that's being done now about reparations for the Black community, African American community in this country that is gaining some energy. And I think of what has been done coming from Canada for First Nations in Canada and returning both land and compensation. And so our Torah teaches that not only do you have to make reparation when you've done something, but the difference between the unconscious and the intentional is that in the intentional, not only do you have to repair and repatriate, but you have to add a fifth on top of it for distress and damages. And so I invite all of us here as part of our committed work. It's not that we're not doing it, but that we also don't want to be triumphalist and think that we're beyond any of the self-assessment and self-evaluation. So all of us who want to come up and connect with this aliyah to be able to have the strength and the wherewithal to seek forgiveness and to offer reparation where we've done things and where we have acted out and where we've missed the mark with some intention, not just naivete. So all those who feel called to come up for this aliyah are all welcome to do so. And you can reach out through the lens with your hand or your talit as you connect to these words, and we offer the blessing. Baruch et Yah HaMevorach.
ברוכת יחם בורכת לעולם ועד.
ברוכה היא המבורכת לעולם ועד. ברוכה את יא אלוהינו רוח העולם, אשר קרבתנו לעבודתה ונתנה לנו את תורתה. ברוכה את יא נותנת התורה.
אמן. ואם נפש כי תחתה ועשתה אחת מכל מצוות אדוני, אשר לא תעשנו ולא ידע השם ונשא עוונו, והביא איל תמי מן הצאן, בערכך לישם אל הכהן, וכיפר עליו הכהן על שגיגתו אשר שגג, והוא לא ידע ונסנח לו. אשם הוא Asham Ladonai.
This is the way to seek forgiveness and repair, to acknowledge our guilt and make this offering. And so we seal the deal on this bracha. Baruch atah Yah Eloheinu ruach haolam, asher natan lanu torat emet v'chayei olam nata betochenu. Baruch at Yah notenet haTorah. So in our three-course Torah meal today, we had the soup and salad and the main dish, and now for dessert, we're going to have this third aliyah. And David, if you could put the aliyah up for a moment, this final one, the one in English there. I just wanted us to be able to see what that was, and so we can discern if we are called. Just know in our community, one can rise up for 1, 0, 1, 2, or all three. There's not that limit piece there. Got to back up. There. Whoop. Keep going. 1, 2 after that one. There we go. Okay. So in this final final aliyah that kind of intense and spreads out a little bit of specific actions where we may have missed the mark. And you see at the end of this that it's not about being in isolation, that we actually bring, these things weren't declared publicly, but we actually publicly came and made these offerings, and that we had a Kohen, someone who was and Levi means to accompany, and Kohen means to align with the holy energy. So that part of this work is not to do it in isolation. It's not to turn guilt into shame or paralyze ourselves with our inadequacy, or for those of us that are present as white as well, to fall into that white fragility and crumble when our prejudices are pointed out to us. As good thinking, committed liberal Jews and allies, this is about us being able to say, to reach out for help, and to have our allies not to do the work for us, but to have people that will help point us out and mirror back, and and be able to help us make expiation, as the Torah says, to help realign us. So for those of us that want to either claim or just appreciate even, or in your own heart, maybe you've got your person, your go-to person, your person that is your accompanier, that holds that sacred center, reminds you of the beauty that you are, even when you mess up, and challenges you to do better. And if that person's not readily coming, then maybe treat this aliyah, this blessing, as a initiative, a catalyst to seek that person, so that you are not isolated and left alone in the work of justice, particularly in such challenging times through this pandemic and so many of the issues we face. We need each other now more than ever, but not only when we're doing the action or signing the petition or going online, but rather when we struggle in our own hearts. And so if this aliyah speaks to you, I invite you to reach out your hand, or the tzitzit, the filaments that connect us to the universe. And we offer the blessing to connect us to this last aliyah. Baruch et Yah HaMevorach.
Baruch Adonai HaBarach Le'olam V'yeh.
Baruch Yamvorechet Le'olam Va'ed. Brucha et Yah Eloteinu Ruach HaOlam Asher Natna Lanu. Asher Ker, Rabbi mistake, Asher Kirvanu Le'avod Ato. Venatan Lanu Et Torato. Brucha et Yah Notenet HaTorah.
Amen. Vayidaber Adonai el Moshe lemor, nefesh ki techata, u'ma'ala ma'al b'Adonai, v'ki chash b'yamito, v'fikadon, uvit shumat yad ovigazel, O asak et amito, O matzah aveda, v'kichash ba v'nishba el sheker alachat mikol, asher ya'aseh adam lechato b'hina, v'haya ki yechata v'yashem, ve'ashivet gzelah asher gazal, o ha'osek asher asak, o et ha'pikadon asher yivkad ito, o et ha'aveda asher matzah, o mikol asher yishaveh alav lesheker, v'shilam oto b'rosho, v'chamishatav yosef alav, le'asher hu lo Yitnenu bayom hashmato, v'et hashamo yavil Adonai, ayil tamim min hatzon, ve'erchacha liyasham el hakohen, v'chiper alav hakohen, lifnei Adonai, v'nislach lo al echad mikol asher ya'aseh li'ashmava.
And so we reach out to fully claim this intention, this aliyah, with the gratitude for this tree of life that is our source. Baruch atah Eloheinu melech haolam, asher natan lanu Torah emet, v'chayei olam natan b'tocheinu. Baruch atah noten Torah. Amen. Mishaberach avotenu v'imotenu. May our time and space through which your glory shines shine on us. Enable us to keep staying in our power individually and collectively. But let us also not isolate and find our friends and allies, our supporters, our agitators and advocates, to keep us aligned with truth and to be able to share sometimes when the burden is too great, so we can lay down the sword and shield by that riverside and pick it up again with all our brothers and sisters, then all our siblings and all beings throughout the world. And let us say, Amen. Yasher Koach, Rivka, thank you for so beautifully lifting up the words of the Torah for us today. And I know we're a bit long in the tooth. For some of you that may be used to an hour or maybe 2 hour service at most, I just want to acknowledge that we're going a little bit longer today, but didn't want anybody's testimony to be rushed, including the Torah. So we're almost there, though. We're coming to the last leg of the journey. And at this moment in time, we'll often take a moment before we recover the Torah to offer prayers for healing. And I just want to acknowledge that as we've just passed this anniversary mark of the COVID pandemic hitting the shores and taking the lives, it almost feels unbearable to say the number of so many hundreds of thousands of our fellow citizens, as well as so many millions of people around the world, and that we're still in the thick of it, that we need that healing energy and that sensibility to cautiously and not rushed, as we've talked about in the communications to the community, to keep aligned with our Jewish values, and stay with safety and well-being at the center, because this pandemic is still very much with us. And yet we also look for the healer, as the psalmist says in 147, the healer of all life, to help bolster our immune system through our vaccinations, through our mask wearing, through our, even as we come in proximity, our remaining sort of distance, not only for ourselves, because I wouldn't want any of us to be the doubly vaccinated transmitters of something that we don't fully understand yet. So for our own sake, know that we're looking forward to coming back, and we're looking at what it means to do so in proximity. And unlike other faith communities, with our resident partners. We have a church and a private school for kids in the foster care system. It's not just about, do we get back to our chapel or not? It's about how do we interact as all people of faith and justice commitment in this community. So Solomon Hoffman, who's an RC student, like May, moving towards the end of that cycle before being launched into the world, was our teacher in our Hebrew school for 1 year. He's a fabulous musician and composer, and he involved over 100 people to lift up this healing prayer from the psalmists And he just released this video. And so I wanted to share that with you today. And while this is happening, if there are names of people, including yourself, that you want to put in the chat for healing of body, heart, mind, or spirit, you should feel free to do so, as Solomon's composition and so many people from so many backgrounds that he put together for this, which for me felt so appropriate for the theme of our day as well. So feel free to put those names in and hold them in your hearts. May the light of each other's light heal the wounds in our hearts. Eitz Chaim he, she is a tree of life, all that hold you dear. For you is the source of all life. In your light, we see light. May the light of each other's souls heal the wounds in our hearts. It is upon us, each one of us, to bring our truth and justice into the world. Aleinu l'shabeach l'adon hakol, לתת גדולה ליוצר בראשית. And so we soften and bend our knee, and we bow to the beauty in each other and this world, this precious world. Litakein olam, to repair the world, b'malchut Shaddai, through the power of the divine, b'hayom hahu, and on that day, Yeh Shemo Echad, we will see the oneness of all and declare the many names of the one of us all. And may all the precious offerings of this day and all the words that we've said, all the songs and prayers that we've offered, bring us closer to this day. And our involvement in our faith-based organizations and issues across the spectrum that lie ahead. We have each other in this work. We have forged deep connections that will not be broken. And that day, this first day of spring, that day is here.